CataractCoach.com, podcast series, episode number 49, with James Katz, mentoring the next generation of ophthalmologists. Welcome back to our Cataract Coach podcast, and today we have a very special guest, Dr. Jim Katz from the Chicagoland area. You may know Jim of all his work with the CEDARS ASPENS group, and he'll explain what that is and what those acronyms stand for. But he's a great mentor to the next generation of ophthalmologists. So if you're a Cataract Coach fan in your 30s and 40s, maybe the first 10, 15 years of your career, this podcast is going to be very worthwhile for you. Jim, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Uday. I'm happy to be here and talk to you today.
Oh, we're going to have fun. Now tell us briefly, what's your story? How'd you get into ophthalmology? And what was your path, basically?
Yeah, we all have our reasons for getting involved. And that's, I think, what you and I are getting good at is showing the next generation how to do that. My story starts probably back in high school, just getting interested in medicine itself. And I had an uncle who was a physician, who was an ophthalmologist. And I really think that was my first mentor. That was the first role model for me as someone within medicine and a direction I may want to go as far as my career. He had a great life, loved being a surgeon, loved taking care of patients. And I really enjoyed that. I really like watching him and his lifestyle, not just in the office, but out of the office too. He loved life. He really balanced things well.
That's fantastic. Well, you're so fortunate to have that early exposure. I'm kind of like most ophthalmologists where I didn't know how to spell ophthalmology until I did a rotation in med school. I had like 3 weeks to kill and doing electives. I was like, I'll try ophthalmology. And then I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. How come no one told me about this?
We go through decision making. We go through, then we get into college and we get into medical school and we get into residency. We're choosing ophthalmology, but we really aren't told or helped with what to do past that. Once we get that level of education, that next level of education, we're kind of set free. We don't learn a lot about the business aspect, the balance, work-life balance. We can talk about those types of things. And things change over time. You and I have evolved since we have started. Things are different than they were, a couple decades ago. And I think it's important for the young doctors coming out to seek a mentor and to kind of have someone guide them, for them to ask questions beyond what they learn in academics.
I think you're right. One of the fallacies is that, okay, I just finished my residency and my fellowship. I'm done. I know everything. Little do you realize that's, a drop in the bucket.
You're right, and you've made your career doing that too. With CataractCoach.com, you have a new video every single day. We're learning something new every day. It's not what we've learned in phaco, again, 10, 15, 20 years ago, but rather what can we learn today for our patients for tomorrow. So I think that's a huge help, and you're a big part of what we do in that case. So when we talk about teaching or mentorship, we're not just talking about holding meetings, which we have in the CEDARS ASPENS organization that I'm involved with and president this year of, but rather just any kind of relationship we have with medical students or residents or even young doctors that have been out for a few years. They're always reaching out. What should I do on my next step? Should I change practices? Should I go into a solo practice? I've been in academics for 3 to 5 years. Is it time to change or to move to private practice or whatever? And so I think we're here for others from our individual experiences, not just you and me. But I recommend that the younger doctors seek out someone that they like, that they trust, to just ask questions and just go over whatever they want to learn, whatever goals they want to attain.
That's actually great advice. Now, tell us, CEDARS, ASPENS. I think CEDARS, I think of like a cedar tree. At Aspen, I think of like Colorado and going skiing. So what is CEDARS, ASPENS? What do these stand for? What are these words?
Well, the CEDARS portion was really a corneal organization. So corneal external disease and refractive surgery is what it stands for. And the ASPENS organization was an organization led by our female colleagues. And we put those organizations together. We worked so much better together than either of us alone. And it's become a very powerful organization of about 100 doctors that are very close-knit. And the idea of this organization, of these surgeons throughout the United States, is the innovation. We kind of think of innovation, collaboration, and education. Those are our 3 main goals or mantras that we try to attain. And very innovative group as far as a surgical group and kind of at a leading edge of what's going on in the country, and the collaboration between each other as well as industry. Again, we're kind of leading the way for studies that are done, getting involved with industry early, finding out the new things that are coming, whether it's in this country or finding out from European colleagues or European meetings, as well as the education of others. And that's really where the mentorship portion kind of comes into play.
So ASPENS was a separate organization, and that stands for, do you remember?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So I'd have to remember exactly what it stands for, but it's also kind of an acronym, and they went through a couple funny acronyms also.
So like answer segment, basically, something.
It's the same. It's the same organization of very well-accomplished female ophthalmologists. We all do the same thing. And the idea was putting those two organizations together to really attain a leadership level of a group of ophthalmologists in the United States.
So how do people get involved? Because I'll first admit, I've been highly unsuccessful at joining CEDARS ASPENS for years. I'm not a part of it.
Yeah.
And I've had no luck in being involved. To me, that's not very inclusive. So how do people, like our listeners, how do they get involved?
Yeah, so the mentorship is a big way that we've really shared. The organization itself is a closed membership. We do take new members each year, but it's a closed membership. It's really an organization that we share with each other. We have WhatsApp groups, we have an email group, we have an annual meeting, and the relatively closed meetings in that we share information, we share successes with each other, we share failures, we share business ideas, but we really are almost like a close-knit family. It's almost a high-level close-knit family, and we succeed with each other and we go through our failures with each other. So that's what we said. It's not an organization that we're looking for 200, 300, 400 members. It's an organization that's been around 8 to 10 years or so. But you have been part of it. You have been part of the mentorship program, and you've helped lead that in one of the last couple meetings that we did.
Out of the goodness of my heart, because I admire the young ophthalmologist, but I assure you, I'm not one of the cool kids. Even in high school, I was on the math team, not the football team. I assure you, I'm a geek.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not cool enough to be part of it. To be very frank. To be very frank, no, being very frank with you, I'm not part of it. I mean, I certainly was happy when you invited me to come speak to the young doctors. That's my wheelhouse for sure.
Absolutely, for sure. And we do take those things in consideration. And we have nominations each year. Like I said, the whole purpose is expanding our knowledge for each other and for the young doctors. And like I said, you have been a part of that. And that meeting, we combine with a meeting. In that case, it was the ACOS meeting in Deer Valley over the summer. And what we try to get these mentees to do is not just learn about the business of ophthalmology, what they should do, but we teach them communication skills. We teach them speaking skills, how to present, the pathway to the podium, fostering relationships with industry. And then we take them and we put them on the podium right after the meeting. So all these skills they've attained, they go out and they put them into play. They're on a panel discussion, or they have their own talk at the next meeting. And they really learn how to get out there.
So how do you become, let's say I'm a 33-year-old out of training, I'm just starting my career. How do I become a mentee to someone like you or someone else in the group?
Yeah, so we have a couple mentorship programs that we lead and run a couple times a year. And they're slightly different with the age group. Some of them even start in residency, and some go out to about 3 to 5 years into practice. So they run a little differently from what we try to teach. In other words, for the younger doctors in residency, it's more what they should look into, what kind of careers they're going to attain, where they want to be, how to negotiate contracts, again, the speaker training, those kind of things. Where the higher level, where it's fellowship and out 3 years, that kind of meeting goes more about how to succeed in practice, how to learn new things, how to, again, foster relationships with industry. A lot of young doctors are interested in working with industry closely, and industry is interested in working with them. So that's another newer take on this, because you know how long it took us, years, to get involved with the industry and to learn how to navigate that course, to learn more about whether it's pharmaceuticals or med device, and to become experienced with those. Doctors are doing that at a younger age. Coming out, some of these are really superstars, trained young in fellowship. So we're kind of, again, evolving and try to bring them to the forefront quickly and early and teach them the skills. We'll go over what a phase 4 study means, IITs, investigator initiated trials, things like that these younger doctors want to know. How do they get involved with these kind of things?
Right.
So I think those are helpful. We'll have panel discussions where we moderate a panel of industry members, not really representing their own company they're working with, but just based on their experience. What are they looking for? How do doctors approach them at a level that we never knew anything about? If they so desire to do that. Not every ophthalmologist needs or wants to do that, but if they want to do that, there are ways for them to succeed. They're right in front of them, and we're sharing that with them.
Yeah, and I think you're right. People tend to evolve. Like earlier on in my career, in my 30s, I was happy to work with a lot of the big name ophthalmic companies. And, things were really different then. But then as you start evolving and a little bit later, you're saying, I'd rather be a little more ultra specialist. Let me work with more early stage companies as opposed to just being on a podium. And some people don't realize, too, you got to put the hard work in. I mean, the small dinner talks is where you end up starting. You don't get to the national podium immediately.
That is right. And again, these younger doctors or doctors just starting out for the first time, they don't have to be necessarily 30, 33 years old, but they're learning what needs to be done if they have the desire to move forward. Again, life sometimes gets in the way. Life sometimes helps them move forward. And we're trying to help them navigate for each of them individually. So some of these younger doctors do want to get involved, and they need to learn to do it the right way. So we talk about even simple things like what is an advisory board versus what is a consultant, and what is a chief medical officer, what is a medical advisory board, a surgical advisory board, scientific advisory, all these different levels. And to your point, strategic companies being quite different than startup companies, and really advantage of working with and learning from each of those. I love working with startup companies. Many of the companies I've worked with, Uday, have succeeded and done very well, and some companies have gone away. They're not in existence anymore, or the med device we've been working with. But yet, every one of these I work with, I've learned more. I'm better off because I know more about the subject matter that they're working with, or the devices in general, whether it's OCT, working on presbyopia, all these things. I'm better off for it. I know more, even if the device didn't succeed.
Right, and you make contacts with people who, if industry people in ophthalmology, they're not switching to ortho or cardiac. They're staying in ophthalmology for life.
That's exactly right. So industry stays in ophthalmology, to your point. And the few that leave end up coming back. So those individuals in a startup, there may be 3, 4, 5 people in the company. You learn what a CEO does, the chief engineer, chief operating officer. And it's the few that are there before a company product is even approved. So you're right. It's about the people, learning about a company. All those things are valuable beyond what that individual product is, the pharmaceutical or the medical device. Right. So I think you're right. It's much bigger picture on that. And it carries on that networking and connections. And we all can value that, and it helps us all.
Well, another challenge, though, for, let's say, a younger ophthalmologist is balancing a newfound interest in these kind of activities, whether it's public ophthalmology, key opinion leader on the podium, working with industry, versus I got a family life still, of course, but I also have a practice that I got to work at. And so the juggling of the three sometimes is not so simple.
And you're right. I've given lectures on that juggling act specifically, where we talk about not just the work-life balance, but there's a work-health balance. We have to take care of ourselves, and something I call even a work-work balance. One of the lectures I gave once on that juggling act itself, I put out, for the panel of speakers, I put out 3 juggling balls, I put out 3 rings, and I put out 3 juggling clubs out in front of the panel and said, each of them, how do they balance this juggling act? And a couple of us got out there and actually juggled and spoke, which was impressive. But the whole idea is it's a very difficult balancing act, and things can break down and fall apart right in front of us. We're talking about our careers, 10, 20, 30 years of our career. And our life goes along right with it. Whether it's our family or wanting to travel or moving to another practice, there's so many things, like I said, we need to navigate. So not just do we talk about the work-life balance and how do we fit that in with our spouse and our young families, and how do we pay enough attention to them to balance? And I honestly think that some of these younger doctors have that at the forefront. They want to take advantage of life how it is now. They want to do it now. They want to attain it now. And often if we can help them with the willingness to have those experiences early, they can again navigate through those types of things. But it's the forefront of their minds now, where for some of us, we kind of put our heads down, went to work with industry, and there were some gaps in between that we learned to fill later.
Right. No, I think the young generation is doing it better than I ever did. I mean, learn from my mistakes, my stupidity. So I was really not good early on at work-life balance. And I've said it on the podcast before. I mean, one of the worst days was I got a letter in the mail. Back then we used like the post office, and it said, "Hey, congratulations, you're like diamond member for this hotel chain because you stayed in their hotel 63 nights last year." And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm a fool. What time away from my family? So then I went to the other extreme. I did 6-7 years of zero eye meetings and only doing family vacations. And I think that was, again, probably not the right balance either. But then I finally figured it out.
And you did, and you worked it out. Each of us does it in a different way.
Right.
My path was, when our children were younger, my wife and I would sometimes take them to these meetings, especially the family-oriented ones, so they would kind of see what it was like. So it wasn't completely away from the family doing these. And these aren't the larger meetings like Academy of Ophthalmology or our ASPENS meeting, but some of the smaller ones that are more family-oriented, and really they're more family-oriented now. I mean, you would never ever see industry with a spouse or something in the past. And now even from that side, you'll see that family balance or that life balance when they're at a meeting, a Hawaiian Eye, a meeting where it may be half-day meetings, so we can enjoy the second half of the day, but we keep our heads down and really listen to lectures and participate in those lectures early in the morning. So even that has evolved, some of the smaller or mid-sized meetings than when we first attended meetings and we were just busy. So I think there's a lot of ways for these younger doctors to learn these things.
No, for sure. And like you said, everyone has their own individual journey. But I really am proud of the younger generation, the ones with no gray hair, who are absolutely like from day one, just getting a good balance of what's going to, enjoying life along the way, instead of our mode of, we were taught delayed gratification. Just shut up, work hard, and just put your head down. Like when I started residency, they said, "Hey, welcome. There are 3 rules of residency." And I said, "Oh, what are the rules?" Suck it up, and suck it up. Any questions? No, sir. So it's like, whoa, that's a different world now. And
that's how we were trained. I agree, Uday. That's how we were trained. That's how we thought. And the younger doctors are coming out now with potentially a better balance. Meetings are somewhat different. There are more virtual events also, or virtual training or speaker training, or participating in advisory boards virtually. There's organizations that nurture these younger doctors, like Young MD Connect. These things didn't exist when we were residents.
Yeah, arguably, you can learn more, let's say, about surgical stuff by watching a CataractCoach video every day on your phone, as opposed to going and sitting into the audience at a big meeting, seeing the video go by on the screen, and then it's gone. Like, oh, where do I find that again? So, but I think for me, the biggest part of a meeting is actually just the human connection now.
That's right. And for me too, there's no question that the main thing that I can spend my time doing now is networking, connecting, find out what I really want to find out. To your point, more from the virtual training, or the CataractCoach.com is a perfect example. Not only can we learn new techniques and see new procedures every single day that you're posting, but we can break down those procedures. I don't watch just what we're doing or someone's doing during that procedure. I watch what the other hand is doing. I watch what's going outside of the main part of the field. What is he or she doing with the opposite hand at that time? That's what makes a difference, the small steps. And you could see that easier in a video than a meeting where you're not going to be able to repeat it. In your videos, we can stop, go back, watch it again until
even slow motion.
It's slow motion. So the value is higher. We can learn quicker. I know people that will watch these videos the day before they try a new technique. to watch them again and again. So
I do that.
we didn't have that. Yeah, we would open a book, and the book was 3 years old, 5 years old. These are cutting edge videos that we can watch right before the day. New procedure, new cataract procedure. It's a comforting way to learn for not just the younger doctors. To your point, for us, it's just practice. We never necessarily perfect something because it always changes, especially in our field of ophthalmology. And that's what I love about it. It's not a stagnant field at all.
Right. I mean, but CataractCoach fans will know that, like, I a couple of years ago when I learned DMEC, I learned it by watching videos of very talented young surgeons. Like one Chicagoland surgeon was a genius, Veldeman. Wow. So I watched all his videos, picked his brains a little bit. Then I started doing DMEC. You know, a few cases later, I said, well, I'm pretty good at this. But I learned by literally watching videos.
Amazing, right? And even for me as a cornea specialist, those procedures weren't around. So again, our procedures and our techniques evolve, and it's a wonderful way for learning these things. You know, I was thinking about something else we talked about earlier, was that balance and that work-life balance. One of the things that is also difficult to create or balance or navigate is what I call the work balance.
What does that mean?
In other words, when you're starting as a young doctor, you're working 4 or 5 days a week. They expect you to be there. They expect you to see patients, expect you to do the surgery. And for those doctors that want to do things like write papers or do a study, write an article, go on a mission trip, something like that, they have to balance work with other parts of work that don't necessarily relate to the clinic, but the ways to talk to the staff, the administrator, and create that value to the practice by them being part of whether it's speaker bureau or consultant or travel somewhere to learn a new technique or attend a meeting. Those real values, how much time can they be away? Like you said, sometimes when we were younger, we were away too much, not enough. Balancing that work balance, I think, is a key to keeping things interesting. For me, I went out after fellowship into private practice, and I still am in private practice my whole career. And one of the reasons I think I've enjoyed it is I haven't become stagnant. I haven't just done LASIK or just done cataract procedures. I've evolved, I've learned more, I've participated in many relationships with industry, to your point, being a consultant, small companies, large companies. I've presented a lot of the data that we've gained, whether I've done the studies or not, to other doctors to teach them. So in other words, this is my way of being part of academics, where you were at a program and got to teach residents directly for years and years and years. My way of giving back and being part of academics is being a mentor. So that's what keeps me going.
Yeah. Well, I actually did both. So actually from day one after I finished my training, I did private practice. And then at the same time, in parallel, I did a little bit of university work. And then that ended up becoming more and more. And eventually it was about, like, you know, half my time is spent teaching residents. And I did that for 22 years until 2022.
And how much did they love that, the residents?
It was amazing, but it was the right time for me to kind of pass the baton and move on to, as you say, different stages of life, different things in your career. You got to keep evolving it, kind of keep pushing the envelope. So I got to do different things.
Yeah.
So
I guess another way that I think is important to we talk about giving back is mission trips, is traveling elsewhere to try to attain a certain goal. And that's something that the younger doctors are interested in. They don't necessarily have the time for, but the interest to do those things, to travel, to do the surgery, to learn about different cultures, how they do things, we were able to create a sustainable program. This was in Vietnam years ago that still carries out to this day. So there's a lot of purposes for that kind of work too, mission type trips.
We had on previous podcasts 2 amazing ophthalmologists who were big in this. Jeff Tabin, of course.
Oh, absolutely.
The Hillman Cataract Project. And we also had Lloyd Williams, who's now starting a whole ophthalmology program in South Sudan. I mean, incredible people. But if I'm a young doc working for a practice, I'm an employee of this group, how do I convince some admin people or some higher up bosses that me doing this mission trip will bring value to the practice? How do I do that?
It's not easy, especially when you don't have a lot of experience with the practice. The dynamics of that individual practice, whether it's private equity owned or private practice, whatever it is, you have a certain amount of time off. So a lot of my time off early on was my vacation. And I turned that vacation or meeting time into just that, a vacation or a mission trip. So I used my own time that I already had off. And sometimes I was able to extend it for the purpose of giving back.
Sure.
Some trips, eventually, we have the opportunity to bring some of our staff, especially surgical staff, to Central America or somewhere where we may be doing a study, offshore study, and have those people participate. So that helps too, because when the doctor's gone, sometimes the staff isn't quite as busy, depending how large a practice. So sometimes if you can get those people involved, it also helps. And I think this younger generation of staff, of technicians, loves giving back. They love mission trips beyond what they did in years past. So I think that's a way of making it relevant to the practice.
If you're going to do mission trips, young doctors, you best go to Cataract Coach and look up the MSICS videos and study them very carefully. So don't expect a $500,000 OR setup when you go on a mission trip.
No. And really, I think on those mission trips, even if you're doing just surgery, just pumping it out, you learn what can not necessarily go wrong, but how you have to adapt, how you have to pivot at that moment based on the instrumentation, based on the staff, based on the condition of the patient. These are some very difficult cataracts. And to your point, you have to have other techniques like the one you talked about to be able to get these lenses out, not just your common everyday phaco techniques, and the instrumentation you use. And finally, the microscopes you use. Not only are they not often the same quality, but if you ever operate at different centers, each microscope's different. It's very comforting to operate in your own setting, however good or bad that is, because you do it every day or every week. Right. When you travel somewhere else, there are a lot of unknowns, and accomplishments or getting over those really, I think, helps you focus on what you're trying to do. And I think that really relates to life and what we do in life, making decisions, being comfortable with certain conditions where we might not be comfortable otherwise. We learn those by doing mission trips. We learn a lot about other cultures and what other people don't have. So I think there's so much value that we can bring back, not just a new technique or having done surgery, but we come back different people from mission trips, I think.
That's for sure. Yeah, for sure. What are the big challenges facing young doctors today? Let's say with private equity, because this has been a big hot topic. A lot of young ophthalmologists say, well, should I join a group that's private equity owned or not? And what's your take on all this?
Well, that's interesting because everyone feels different about this. And a lot of private equity companies that are larger companies are seeking these young doctors out and trying to get them to come to that practice, either by the pay or some type of benefits. You have to decide what you want to start out with. And I guess the first thing is, don't be afraid if the first job isn't your last job as an ophthalmologist, or your first practice is not your last practice. Ideally, I would start off with where you want to be, what location of the country you want to be. Do you want to be near family? Do you want to be in a rural area? Where do you want to be? I think is the right place to start. Because most likely that besides work will be what you enjoy doing or what you like doing, whether it's the weather, mountains, whatever it is. And then what, to your point, type of practice you want? Is it academics? Is it private practice? Is it somewhere in between, working for a hospital group or private equity? So I don't think there's any right answer. For me in private practice, I help run the business. I've learned so much about that business aspect of it as the years have gone by. With academics, with private equity, you don't have to be involved with that. And a lot of younger doctors might want that path. More regular hours. It's well defined what your responsibilities are. But it's not necessarily your practice. You are an employee. And so is everyone else. So you're not responsible for the employees the same way. And some people may like that, some don't. I have complete control in my practice, being a private practice, and I enjoy that. I enjoy being able to make my own decisions along with my partner and doing what we feel is right for us and for our patients. And we'll see how long that lasts. It's lasted for a couple of decades now, and I would like to think, I hope it continues. I guess a final group of doctors or practice that you can start is a solo practice. And I've seen, even over the last year or two, 2, 3, 4 young doctors reach out to me. They want to start solo practice. And I put them in touch with those doctors that have done that within the last, 3 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Going through that process can be done also. Some like doing it on their own, not having anyone involved in setting other than them, and starting the business themselves. And there's some advantage to that. So people are still doing that too. So Uday, I think there's a lot of ways we can go into practice now versus a number of years ago. And
Yeah, we had a podcast from a young ophthalmologist, 0 gray hair, early 30s, Jeffrey Tran, who left a group after his, he did training, joined a small group, wasn't the right fit, left it, and just started up solo, hung a shingle. And we talked all about the process and some good pearls on that episode for sure. But like you say, your first job is like your first girlfriend, your first boyfriend. They're great and all, but may not be the one you're with forever. So that's okay. And that's okay. Right.
Yeah. And I have seen some of these younger doctors have 2, 3, 4 years of practice. And it seems like it's almost time to buy into the practice. And that's where things get maybe not so nice, or the relationship changes a bit, where they don't want to do that anymore. And that's when I see a few of these doctors going into solo practice or changing. So you're right. They do sometimes have a few years behind them to gain experience, or really define and decide what they want. We don't always know that coming out of residency or fellowship. We're finally a doctor, and we're finally an ophthalmologist, and we're finally going to have our first job. And sometimes we just want to get there and start doing surgery, and we forget about who we're working for, or what that path will be. Is there a buy-in potential? Not only how am I going to be this year for the 1 year with my first year contract. That's what most young doctors are concerned with. And that really is not what's most important. It's hard to explain that, but it's what is the potential 3 and 5 years out.
Right.
And then you really need to think in the future. Sure.
That's when things go south. I think things go south because why are there so many lone wolf ophthalmologists? Because it's a really predatory system out there. So a lot of times a young doctor is going to join a group, or maybe just join another person, and that other person is going to take good advantage of the young gun for a few years. And then when it's time to buy in, it'll be something nonsensical or ridiculous. I was a victim of this. And so I just politely said, I declined. And that person to this date still owes me a huge amount of back pay, which I'll never be able to collect. I mean, so there are plenty of really bad players out there, I assure you. And hopefully you won't run into one, but you may. And it's okay to regroup and just do your own thing. You'll be better off. You really will.
Absolutely. It's okay to make changes. How far into practice were you when that happened to you?
I can't give too many details here.
Oh, okay. I mean, you're done. But the whole point is,
these are people. This is people you may know.
Okay.
Like I'm sure you know.
The point really is you had some experience, and you're able to make decisions based on those experiences. The details don't matter.
I was in my 30s.
Yeah. So the whole point being is that you can make changes if you need to. If you're successful and have a great relationship with that practice, that's not only fine to stay, that's great. It's beneficial to everyone involved. But what I'm getting at is it's not just 1 year into practice you may make changes, or 3 years or 5 years. Based on where you want to be, how that practice is going, how your partners are. Are you moving from academics to private practice, or vice versa? Where are you within your career? And a lot of the younger doctors are, by definition, just starting. But there are changes we can make in our 30s and 40s also for our careers, or even later, that are totally, we can sustain those and substantiate those, the reasons why. It's the right decision for us. So that's what I'm saying. So how far into practice you were is just an example of you can do it at any time. What's best for you in your life at that moment. And my point is, for the next 3 to 5 plus years after that, we have to think ahead a little bit, not make these rash decisions about what we do.
No, for sure. I think one of my favorite pearls, which you'll laugh at, it's going to be the right partner to join if you'd like to go with his family and your family on a group family vacation somewhere for a long weekend. If you can pick yourself doing that and like, yeah, it's a cool person, I'd like to hang out with him or her. probably going to be okay. But
Yeah, that's a
in my
great
case, right, in my case, I found the other person a little like on the slimy side. I'm like, I kind of wouldn't want to hang out with them in my free time. And that was like, ding, 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 warning. Hello, how did I not see this? But then again, I've always been naive. I've always been too trusting and too naive.
You recognize it, though. You recognize it, and that's okay. There's no wrong time. You don't have to feel bad and say, we should have done this a year ago or 3 years ago. Changes are okay. I've gone through them. You've gone through them. We shared some of these stories. It's okay to do that. And we learn. Some of us learn quicker than others, but we learn, and we're all in different situations. And that's okay. I think that's all right.
Yeah, I think you're right, too. And the neat part is we're still not training enough ophthalmologists. We just had the ophthalmology match a couple of days ago here in the U.S. And I actually looked at some of the data, and it's like, oh, there are actually more spots now. Because up until like maybe 2 years ago, we were stuck at about 460 residency spots for the whole country. And now it's somewhere in the 500-ish range. So obviously we've increased a little bit, but it's still training 500-something ophthalmologists for the entirety of America per year. We're still very limited on numbers.
And I think we're still losing closer to 530, 550 on average a year. So we're still losing more than we're gaining, although that's nice to hear the numbers that we're training are higher, because it was more like 430, 440 before. And you said it's gone up to what this year?
Yeah, I was looking at it's sfmatch.org. It has all the statistics. I looked at it 2 days ago. Yeah, as of, let's say, 4 or 5 years ago, it was about 460-ish. Now it's about let's say mid 500s, mid to low 500s.
That's really good.
But then a lot of ophthalmologists, people, especially of my generation, aren't really putting in that 40 to 60 hour work week anymore. So maybe the number of full-time equivalents is not being fully replaced.
That's absolutely true. And that's more, again, lifestyle, opportunities to do other things, research days, study days, those types of things. I even see younger doctors desiring to do that. And again, that's not wrong. That's not a bad thing. How does it fit into the practice is important. I don't think those are bad questions to ask, even starting out as a brand new doctor. It's not the first few questions to ask, but as you're getting closer to it, lifestyle is important because you're going to be doing this for decades. So I think that is reasonable to define what you want to do and have the fit of the practice such that you may sustain or be there for a long time or buy into that practice, and it may be your practice in the future. So there's nothing wrong with letting the practice know ideally what you would like or how the fit is. You just don't want to go overboard with saying how much vacation am I going to get, how little can I work, how little can I do.
Of course.
There's a give and a take.
Like everything else, of course, there's a balance. But if you're a young ophthalmologist, let me give you permission. You are now receiving permission from CataractCoach himself. It's okay to put your family and your relationships first, your health, your mental health, your physical health second, and your beautiful passion as an ophthalmologist can be third. And that's okay. And I give you permission.
Completely agree. You heard it from the best. I completely agree with you. And not only can you do that, that's probably how it should be done.
Right.
What you have to realize as a young doctor or any time through your career is that those things need to be done together. So when we talk about that order, that should be a priority in your mind. Family first, always. However, occasionally if the family's with you on a vacation or a mission trip or things, you can combine some of these things, and that really makes it work. The more people you know, the more these doctors in the industry become your friends. And it is like going out to dinner with just a group of friends at home, except you may be somewhere else. So I think a lot of this can be done in combination, yet the order to do it is just what you said, Uday. Completely agree with you.
And yeah, you can. Some of my fondest memories are doing mission trips, like in the middle of the South Pacific to Tonga. So we're out in the middle of the Pacific in Tonga, and we're combining relationship and family. We're combining my mental and physical health. What a pleasure that was. And my passion of ophthalmology all combined together on a beautiful mission trip where we brought sight to countless blindness people. It was amazing. One of my favorite things ever is mission trips.
And you come back a better person for it. I've done so many mission trips where I felt they did way more for me than I did for them. And we were curing blindness. People could see again. And I think I felt better than they did for what we could give back. and pay it forward to them. Amazing feelings that you almost can't describe unless you've done these trips, because part of it, to your point, is the journey there with whoever you're with, family, friends, industry, other doctors. Part of it is seeing how other people live and cultures. And a lot of these are third world type countries where you're not staying in these beautiful hotels. The food isn't great. That's not the purpose of this. You're learning about other cultures. You're taking care of people, and you're teaching. But those experiences of what the rest of the world is like, the majority, and how lucky we are with not just where we live and what we have, but how we're trained and the education we have and our skill sets is nothing like the rest of a lot of the world. So I think learning those things also makes us different people, and our families different people. Our children, our spouses experience these types of things too, and we will never forget them. They make who we are, and I would never have given those things up. And I could hear the passion you have when you talk about those trips like they were yesterday. Some of our greatest memories.
It makes you a better surgeon because you have the most challenging cataracts with the most rudimentary equipment. Go for it. And there's no backup. So there's no vitreoretinal surgeon. So if you drop that nucleus, you drop the nucleus. You just couch the patient.
You really have to think what you're doing. Yeah, you do. Yeah, I remember in India, when it was so warm, they'd have the fans going, but the electricity would go out every once in a while. And they would put on the torches or the flashlights. You would continue to operate. You'd kind of just stop when the lights went out or power went out, and then they put on the flashlight or torches. The only good thing about it was when the fans went out, the suture didn't fly in the air. Because the Tenno suture with the fans on would fly in the air. And that was the only good thing about it. You could actually suture in those days with those large incisions. But you remember those things like it was yesterday.
And another good bit of advice, if you go to some of these countries, you got to be very careful. Your American GI system is not going to tolerate this so well. My advice is only eat fried food, whatever it is fried. Nothing survives. No pathogens survive deep frying. You can eat fried food, and then only sparkling water, because that sparkling water is bottled somewhere where it's actually sanitary. That's it.
Yeah. So if it's sparkling, there are bubbles, it has to be sealed properly. Some of these other bottles, they can reseal if it's just from tap water. So sparkling water, if it bubbles, it hasn't been opened before. That's great.
Oh, the fun thing. You know what? I need to get another one of these trips on the books now. I got to plan this out. It'll be a lot of fun. But no, I think those are all great points for young ophthalmologists. It's really an exciting time. Now, what are you've got a beautiful ability to look back now on so many decades in practice. The challenges we talked about at the beginning of your career. Now, what are kind of more the mid-career challenges? And how do we overcome those, or how do we deal with those?
Well, I think the world changed around us ever since COVID. I don't think things have been the same. Things are, of course, very quiet during COVID. It seems like that was 10 years ago, but it really changed how we did things. It's changed in a private practice world. I think it's really changed the staffing. So much more now than ever in our practice. I don't think it's so uncommon. We're concerned about the staffing. How many patients can we see and how much surgery we can do is based on the staffing. It's never been like that before. It was how many patients you could see per hour, the surgical center setting, how many rooms did we have to do surgery, bounce back in 2 rooms. But now I think the limiting factor is sometimes the staffing. It's not the patients. We have more patients than we could line up, more surgery than ever. It's the staffing. A lot of these younger techs and staff have left and gone, these remote jobs. Everyone wants to work from wherever and not show up. In our field, we kind of have to be there to do the work. There's telehealth and those kind of things. But in general, right now, we are a service organization. We have to be there to see the patient. We have to be there to do the surgery. So that's one of the main changes I've seen, and how to keep up with the current staffing. The demands that they have now are different than before. Have you seen that in your area with staff?
Yeah, it's certainly changing. I mean, staffing has been a bit of a limiting factor too, and it's also sometimes it's hard to get great staff. They're being pulled in many different directions now.
They go from practice to practice, and then another part is the surgical staff. So same thing. the surgical technicians and nurses sometimes move on to other places. So not having that nurse that you've worked with for 5 or 10 years straight and having them know exactly how you're thinking and understand. We're always working with new people. So having them used to how you do things, keeping up with your level of efficiency is a little different. We have to think about those things and understand that some of our staff may not have the same experiences that we're used to in the past. So those are some of the things, I guess, that are newer that we deal with, and everything is good. But I do think those are somewhat changed that we see difficulty in finding new staffing, to your point, those types of things.
Well, there's one more thing mid-career that I found to be a challenge, and that was when presbyopia hit me. Presbyopia hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, you know what? Thank goodness I'm a low myope. Woo. Just no more contact, no more glasses, walk around undercorrected, low myope. Life is good, but boy, presbyopia, that's another challenge. I remember when I was first starting off, I could practice, I'd operate under the microscope. I just would never touch the focus button because I focus down in the bag, and if I want to see up on the cornea, I just accommodate up. But now, obviously, I can't do that anymore.
I've always been interested in presbyopia as far as studies with IOL designs, multiple designs, with the drops that are out there and different types of drops, because with presbyopia, there's so many levels. We're talking about accommodation, we're talking about pseudo accommodation, we're talking about multifocality of the eye, and we're talking about pupil diameter sizes. So there's so many ways we can address these things. Right. But to your point, it was never really an issue until it hit me. And now we see how important it is. Sometimes I'll watch videos of the younger doctors, and they're so accommodating, so much accommodating that the videos are out of focus.
Yeah, right.
You have to hold back on those. And I do remember those days. The more stress you have, the more nervous you accommodate more. And sometimes it's not even in focus in these great cases. But we do lose that ability over time, and we're working so hard to solve it at one of those levels or multiple levels that I just spoke about. So that's the final frontier. That's a good one. That's something we're all striving to achieve, not just for you and me at that age, but for all our patients. There's so many patients that will benefit from that.
Now, are you big on the miotic drops for treatment of presbyopia? Have you tried this, or you give it to your patients?
I do use it some. I think there have been some issues with them as far as how long they last, and there's a new one out there. There's the original one, and there's a new one that they're going to start launching and marketing. I do think they have their place. I do think they have a good fit for certain patients. I think one of the issues was us finding that patient that it worked really well for the reasons that I just said. And this is the ones that are out there are working on the pupil size, and it's a pinhole effect. And some of those people do extremely well. I've tried it, and when I use it, it works for me. My pupils get quite small. But some people don't like the side effects they can get from that. And I'm talking about the short-term side effects you get, and or the fact that you do have to put it in regularly. On the other hand, some love it because you can put it in just when you want it, just when you need it. But the whole point of this isn't one thing fixes all. Now we think of surgical devices, IOLs, as they're permanent, they're going to be forever. But again, they address one part of that presbyopia. And some of these techniques or procedures or even pharmaceuticals may be additive to treat presbyopia, and it could change over time. And then the other is, as we first gain that presbyopia, it might be in our even late 30s, early 40s, we might want to use a treatment or device or pharmaceutical that works for those low levels of presbyopia, and not have expectations that it will fix, 2.25, 2.5 diopters of presbyopia. So we have to be realistic and set expectations for our patient. And then I think there are things out there that can bridge these different levels of presbyopia until we take out the lens and deal with that.
So kind of a spectrum, starting off, let's say early mid-40s with a presbyopic drop, a myotic drop, then maybe advancing somewhere, maybe a slight monovision. If they like in context, you could even do it in keratofractive and LASIK. And then maybe that'll carry them through for a while. And then at some point, maybe just IOL surgery.
That's exactly right. And there are other techniques looking at the lens shape, ciliary muscles, scleral space, scleral expansion, lasers on the scleral microporation, all these ways of changing the dynamics of the eye to improve or increase this accommodation or multifocality or pseudo accommodation. They're out there. They're going to be working. We need.
I know there's so many exciting things happening in ophthalmology. I'm kind of sad that I'm mid-career. I wish I was like, beginning of my career. So I'd have a longer time in this, because that brings our other aspect here now is, the things we'll face, let's say 20 or 25 years from now, when we're kind of towards the tail end of our career. I mean, there's a whole other set of issues.
Can't even imagine, 20, 25 years from now, what ophthalmology will be like, how we will treat these types of things. We do so well in general with myopia and astigmatism, but the presbyopia, I think, will be solved way, way better than it will be even in the next 5-10 years. And so you're right. Who knows what the future will hold? And that's why it's so nice to be an ophthalmologist. And for these younger doctors, they have what a career, and they will succeed well beyond what we've done, I hope, especially my mentees and the ones that really have that interest in succeeding. And I can only imagine what's going to be out there with treatments in 10, 15 years. Amazing.
Yeah, no, for sure. So tell me about your mentees. You mentioned you have some mentees that you work with specifically.
Yeah. So, we talk about the ones that have gone through the mentorship program through our CEDARS ASPENS organization. But
you didn't tell us, how do we get selected? How do I have a young ophthalmologist who wants to be selected?
So those, depending on the program, those residents or fellows are nominated. The nominations are sent to the CEDARS ASPENS, and we go through them by the patient's write-up, what their CV is, what their desires are. We try to select people that are passionate and interested in participating in this program. And we really get ones that are interested in making themselves better, learning communication skills, listening to what can be done beyond what they learn in academics, things like that. But we have lots of people that I consider mentees that will call out 3, 5, 10 years into practice. Some of these are already members of CEDARS ASPENS. Some are just people that we've met over the years and network with that feel comfortable saying, hey, I think it's time. Time for what? Time to move, or time to go into solo practice, or time to finally move from academics into private practice. I have an opportunity. And so they explain what that opportunity is. I'm not the only person they're calling, but they trust us as a mentor. So I think one of the greatest things about being a mentee is having a mentor. We all have them or had them. You have to have a mentor to have a mentee. You have to know and have lived that to know what to tell these people. So like I said, they will succeed beyond what we have done. And you want to pay it forward. What we have gotten from our mentors and the giving nature, the volunteer work they've done, I want to, and a lot of us want to, give back. And you do this again every day with CataractCoach.com too. We're giving back to make others better.
Now, you have for your role as president for CEDARS ASPENS, what do you have in store? What are some of your goals, and what would you like to achieve during that presidency?
So we have some initiatives. We're working with some companies and some studies about products that are out there that we're doing IITs, or this investigator-initiated trials for. We're working with making the efficiency of cataract surgery better. We have a project going on with that. We have an education committee that we're kind of helping teach some of these younger doctors cataract skills. They can reach out to us. So I think we're keeping that conduit of not just having them attend a meeting, but throughout the year until we see them at the next meeting. Right. They can reach out to that, and we can reach out to them. They can reach out to us. We may have a Zoom meeting where they participate. But all these things, I think, keep us connected for whatever that next question might be on their mind, whether it's getting into a fellowship program or the first job. Whatever's on their mind is what's important to us. And we have patients. We have doctors in their 30s or 40s changing careers, or saying, should I get involved with this company? Should I try this? Is this extending myself too far? How did you do it when your kids were were still in high school and the spouse was working. And how did you, again, navigate through those types of things? We get people calling all the time with those type of questions. And my wife even gets those kind of questions. How did you do it? I want to do it how you guys did it. Those kind of things. So we answer for how we've created our work-life balance, and I consider my family and my wife part of that. And I think we've been successful doing it. We did it our way, and people are asking questions about how to do that for the things they think we've succeeded in. I love sharing that information. So those are the types of things we do.
It looks like you're going to have a fun year as president. I love it. You got a lot of fun things planned.
Oh, yeah. The best. It's the best.
That's really neat. I mean, I think we're all blessed to be in ophthalmology. I think we're lucky we all somehow stumble upon this, whether it's through our uncle or like me, just happen to do a rotation in it. I think we're all so lucky to kind of be in this little club, which is really, really a blessing. So.
Love it.
No, neat stuff. Well, I really admire the work you do with all the young doctors. I think it's really important. Like the session you had at Deer Valley when I participated, gosh, all those young doctors looked at you with such, wide open eyes, so enthusiastic. It was so amazing. It was just, you really put a lot of effort into making their lives significantly better. I think that's
well, thank you.
Admirable.
It means so much to me, Uday. And when they reach out and at a meeting, when they come up, one or two of them, and tell me what they've done, and they're so excited to see me, it makes me feel so good for what we've done as a group and an organization, and what I've done myself. It's the giving back. It's paying that forward. And it feels better than a lot of even the other parts of the work we do. So I really value that. Thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll put a link down below in the description here. And if people want to contact you, I'm sure they can reach you through the CEDARS Aspen site. And we look forward to seeing you at an upcoming meeting.
This was great, Uday. This is so valuable. Thank you for your time, and thank you for including me in this podcast.
Oh, no. Thank you for all that you do. I think you're an inspiration to many, and I'm really, really proud to call you a friend, because you really selflessly give so much of yourself to help the next generation. I also think it's because you want to know that in 20 years, when you need a cataract surgery, you're going to have someone really good do it. You're going to cherry pick somebody that was like your mentee. So
you are correct. Are you going to be doing cataract surgery in 20 years, Uday?
Yeah. Someone will be. I've trained study, I think.
Of course they will.
No, by then it'll be all robotic. You just robot does the whole thing, and so who knows? It'll be amazing, whatever it is. But again, thank you, Tim. Keep up the great work. Looking forward to seeing all you do with CEDARS Aspens. And for my viewers and listeners, I want to remind you, every Sunday we got a new podcast. Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, YouTube, anywhere you find podcasts, you find the CataractCoach podcast. And of course, we still have a new video every single day. We're up to 2,100 something. It's a lot of videos. So much good stuff. Remember, too, we have a free PDF book, How to Learn Cataract Surgery, on CataractCoach.com. A free 25-part curriculum series about how to learn phaco. Do not graduate your training and stick with divide and conquer your whole life. You got to learn top. Anyway, it's all out there. Check it out, and we will catch you guys next time.